All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Angie Peacock. I'm a psychiatric drug withdrawal consultant and a healing coach. I enjoy bringing important conversations that interest me, that are just a wealth of information in our community, things that I think you should know. And today is our last, I'm really sad about it, but it's our last conversation with the Alliance for Benzodiazepine Best Practices. Today is Andora Hightower. Andora, you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody.
Hello. So let me read her bio to you. It's very impressive, and then we will jump right into questions. Andora Hightower serves as a board member on the Alliance with a focus on fundraising and development. Andora earned both her graduate certificate in fundraising for nonprofits in 2022 and a bachelor's degree in 2012 from Thomas Edison University. Andora has over 2 decades of management experience and has a keen interest in development. As someone who is seasoned in the programmatic aspects of care coordination, public policy, and advocacy, she understands the comprehensive landscape and the necessary elements for success in the nonprofit world. As a communication and development manager with the National Center for Advocacy and Recovery, NCAAR, Andora is responsible for a strategic development plan inclusive of digital platforms and leads the volunteer fundraising committee. Her long-lived inspiration to be part of the solution is woven in great part by the loss of her sister, Donna, to a fatal overdose where benzodiazepine misuse was a major component due to the lack of education, overprescribing, and tragic withdrawal ramifications. Ooh, what do you think when you hear me read the whole thing like that?
First of all, it's really a lot and a mouthful, but who is that girl?
That's you.
Wow.
Impressive and sad at the end, you know?
Yeah, it's bittersweet, right?
Right. Right. So let's start there. Like, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you come to work with the Alliance? How have benzodiazepines impacted your life in particular?
Okay, great. So let's see. Somewhere around, I would say December, I was just kind of perusing through LinkedIn and trying to still understand how it works. And I saw an ad from the Alliance that said they were looking for some, board members that had a specific focus on fundraising. And so I connected with them because of my personal experience with my sister's, life being lost to, in part, by benzodiazepines. I want to be clear, though, that her overdose was related to multiple things, of which benzodiazepines was a major component. She suffered from long-term pain management issues, and she was on a hefty dose of methadone pills. She actually had take-home pills, but she was trying to taper herself off of the benzo. She knew that they were a problem after about a year of taking. She was on both Klonopin and something else that I can't remember, but she was on 2 benzos at the time, and she had said, I'm noticing that my thoughts and things aren't working properly, and I really do think it only happened after a few months of being on these benzos. She was prescribed them because she couldn't sleep well, or she was sleepwalking, and so they worked great, like for a month, and then they didn't work so great, and she started noticing she was having a lot of side effects. So she did not probably know enough about how to come off of them. Most people do not. And she ended up, I think, almost cold turkeying herself. So literally going from within 3 days coming off of everything. And so when she passed, she actually had a benzo withdrawal seizure, which ultimately was part of her, the reason for her death.
Yeah. And benzos plus pain medication.
Yeah.
That just the cocktail alone, I think they say 40% of opiate deaths have a benzo included with them. Yes, somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then you took the Alliance up and you said, hey, I want to help.
Right. And I think that's part of why I want to talk about advocacy here today. So advocacy is, for me, no one really wants to spend their time on something they don't feel super strong, passionate, and, have a lot of emotion behind and motivation to see some kinds of solution change. And so for me, it stemmed in my sister, but when I started to see the big picture of, and the Alliance has really opened my eyes to a lot of things. I've been in around the addictions field for 25 years, but we're never drug specific. We don't, and and the National Center for Advocacy and Recovery is for all things recovery. And we're all about multiple pathways and harm reduction and many things. So we don't look at, in fact, we look at very much this patient-driven model, which is, if benzos work for you, that's fine. But I didn't really quite understand how much of a difference it would make at the front door. And that's what brought me here, because I thought to myself, if my sister had known, if I had known, and I could have said to her, hey, because I didn't even know, you really want to be careful before you choose to do this, because there's all these other things that could potentially happen. I realized she may have made that choice anyway, but maybe we could have talked about other or better ways of coming off the medications, things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's just talk in a broad way for people in the audience that don't know, what is advocacy? What is the difference between advocacy and activism? You want to talk about that just to start, just let's lay the playing field.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so it's funny, we just had bring your children to work day, and I made a little PowerPoint slide for them about advocacy and policy, and I thought to myself, it's really not that simple. It's actually very, like, even though the definition of advocacy is simple. So I mean, like, we think about advocacy in the sense of it's usually connected to policy, especially in our space, right? When we talk about you want to see systems change, regulatory change. And so advocacy is a part of that, but advocacy is so much more than that to me. So for me, and I can just talk about New Jersey because that's where I'm rooted in, and that's where, I've seen our program take off at my other organization, which is, it starts with an idea of what is the problem and what do you want to see done about the problem? And usually there's not one answer, there are several answers. So advocacy to me is about forming some of those solutions and then finding people who want to come together, and maybe they want to compartmentalize, I want to focus on this particular topic and you'll focus on that topic. And then somehow somebody or many people have to organize these people and help everyone kind of have their voice heard. So advocacy to me is about being heard, simply that. Being heard. You may not create that change right away. It may take time, but even just using the language, getting the messages out there, that's all part of the process. And so it's also, though, advocacy and activism are, closely tied as well. And a lot of people will use the term interchangeably, but they're not exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
I find activism to be a little bit more at times polarizing. That's my personal experience.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but in our space, I feel like advocacy is a little bit more middle ground. Like, you want to hear all the problems, all the potential solutions. What can we do? What's realistic right now? And when we talk about some changes in New Jersey, we're making a lot of changes, and we're trying to make a lot of changes in decriminalization and these kinds of things, such as like Oregon has recently done. And so it took a long time to get there. I mean, just to get to the point where you can decriminalize marijuana and things like that, a decade or more of constant, very small changes. Just the language we use is huge as well. And that's part of advocacy, advocating for the language around, how we're trying to mobilize people. We're not trying to stigmatize.
Polarize.
Yeah.
Interesting, but I took a class in social work school about game theory. Do you know about game theory? Okay, it's really fascinating. Let me explain it really quick, because I think it's so key to advocacy. So what you do is you lay out, this was our semester project, but I'll just, because for sake of communication and like quickly. So you lay out like a line and you say, here's all the players in the benzodiazepine problem. We got big pharma, we have the government, we have the FDA, the DEA, we have doctors, we have patients. You lay them all out and you put their views on the subject. So like the DEA, they have it level, whatever, controlled. The government, they could care less about what doctors do. Pharma, they're making profit off of it. Patients need it because they think it works, and then the patients that are harmed are over here. So you see all their stakes, and you see like, what influences do they have? Do they have power? Do they have money? Do they have mobilization? Like, what do they have that keeps them in that place? And then if you're the advocate and you say, I want big pharma to not care so much about their profits, and I want patients to be more informed, and I want the government to change some regulatory policy. How do I get all that to happen? How do I get all these stakeholders to move closer to what I want?
Mhm.
And you don't do that by screaming, by picketing the offices, you know what I mean? Like these polarizing activities, even Twitter, like can turn people off and say, oh, I can't listen to these patients because they're all, look at them, you know, like they're just acting crazy on Twitter. Why should I listen to what they have to say? So anyway, it's a way to like lay out like who is in the stakes and how do I get them to move closer to my position? And there's ways to like have a meeting with these three different, you know, these organizations. And then, you know, I could write a bill for this, but I need to like keep in mind what pharma's going to want and keep in mind what the doctors are going to want. And like, how do I get them all to kind of do what I want them to do? So it's really interesting way to work advocacy without like turning people off, but understanding what it takes to bring them closer to the ideal situation. Anyway, so it's
I
kind of
love,
like what you're saying. Isn't it cool?
but I love that. And I love
Really
games.
cool.
So I would love if you could send me something.
I'm going to send you a book. We had a couple books about that, but we did that as a semester project. I did the suicide epidemic within the veterans community, and it was just so fascinating. It was like a 90-page thing. It was like huge project to figure out. But anyway, it's really good. So that's the difference to me between advocacy and activism. It's like you really have to know who you're dealing with and like what you want, and it has to be concrete, and it takes time to get people to move to your, you know, position. So let's talk, can you talk a little bit about the Alliance? Like what advocacy are they working on? Where are their goals? What's the long-term strategy for advocacy?
Sure. So for the Alliance, one of the things that I'm learning is that they've spent a long time doing a great job of building their credibility through research and writing and all these things. But we're just now starting to talk about what the advocacy piece looks like. So I feel like the strategy is still unfolding, to be completely honest. But one of the ways that we're starting is by identifying, you know, where each board member is located and how we can each kind of dig some roots, create some roots, some grassroots advocacy where we are. And, you know, since I'm from New Jersey, as well as Doreen, who was interviewed before me a couple of weeks ago, we both have already met with someone from New Jersey to try to talk about the current legislation. But to be honest with you, I feel like there's so much more work that needs to be done there, that the legislation right now is probably not really going to go very far. But that's okay. We started the conversation, and that's the important piece, making that connection. Here's who we are. We're from the Alliance. We're very honest about, you know, where we personally come from and why this is important to us. And that's what they really want to hear about. They don't really want to hear about your organizational attachments. They want to hear about, you know, why should the policymakers make any change at all if they think you're paid to do it or lobbying to do it or whatever. So that's so important to note about advocacy compared to why not just hire a lobbyist or whatever. So yes, I'm sorry, I got off track.
That's okay. No, you're doing good. So just, yeah, you're talking about like, how do you start to be, how do you get into the advocacy world? And then like long-term, what would that look like? Yeah.
So I think that is starting at the community level. So it's basically identifying people around us. We're going to be kind of getting out there for the first time in Jersey. We're tabling an event coming up in June, a wellness walk, and we're going to be, we'll have some publications about the Alliance, what we can do, how we can help, and how people can help us by joining us to advocate. So yeah, I think it starts off with that real community and grassroots stuff by just starting to gain exposure. I think that's number one. So the first strategy is gain exposure by letting people know who you are, what you have to offer, and ways that they can help, which is like, you know, case in point for doing this interview, right? I mean, we're trying to get out there and say, actually, there are things that you can do to help us and to help yourselves, really.
Yeah. So that's the next question. And that's always a question that I get. I actually see it as part of the healing process. When people start to feel better, they get kind of angry and they're like, how did this happen to me? And they figure it out. Like, what do you mean we've known about this for 60 years and nobody's done anything? Like, why are you telling me this didn't have to happen to me in the first place? So it's a phase. And they're like, Angie, what can I do? Can I what do I do? How do I get involved in this? How do I help change it? Some people actually do it and some people don't, and they just move on with their lives. But what can you tell us, like, what can the average person sitting at home right now watching, whose life has been impacted by a benzo in some way, how can they help, or what can they do?
Hmm. Well, I think it depends on what they want to see changed. If it's regulatory change, I would say get in touch with, call, write a letter. I think we have a letter coming up online, to write into your own legislator saying, hey, this is what happened to me. Here's what I'd like to see change. Starting those conversations is really important. But also getting involved in a like communal level with an advocacy group that we're hoping to begin to establish. I think that helps, because then maybe you don't even know yet how you want to help. I mean, that's part of the beauty of what advocacy is it's something different for everybody. Some people don't like the policy piece at all. They just want to be more, hey, I want to let people know that, or I want to hand out pamphlets, or whatever it is. That's what I think. It's important to note that it means something different for everybody, and to help yourself identify that, maybe by talking through it with people over time.
Yeah, I think there's like multiple things. I always tell people, just share your story. I don't care if it's on YouTube or if it's on TikTok or Instagram, just talk about it in whatever way you want, as deep as you want or not. Just, hey, and I took a drug because I was really anxious and it made me feel really bad, and it took me a year to get off of it, and I just want to share it so that people in my family know, like, be careful when you take a medication, like anything, even stuff like that little
Yeah.
can change. You don't have to write it up and it has to be perfect and you get it published somewhere. You don't have to write a book, but there's just like something simple like that. Talk to your doctor, bring him some information, or her. What was I thinking? Oh, the FDA MedWatch report. Do you guys have that? I think you have that on the website too.
We do have that on our website. Yeah, that's definitely, it's something that we're still doing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the story piece though, because I do think that's so vital.
Yeah,
And it is part of our strategy. It's something that I've brought up recently as one of the very first social media campaigns that I'd like to do around an advocacy program is a storytelling campaign. I think that it is so powerful to everyone. I mean, I don't care who you are, who's not moved by someone's personal journey around this particular topic. It's a very complicated topic, because it goes back to, if we take a step back, and here is Mental Health Awareness Month. I want to just take a quick second to note that.
Yes.
Because what is the real reason that people are typically prescribed benzodiazepines? Everyone feels no one would prescribe something that could potentially hurt me. And I don't believe for a minute that any doctor wants to hurt a patient. But nonetheless, these and many other classes of drugs can potentially harm people. And so just taking a moment to think about why we ask for those things to begin with is typically because of some kind of mental health symptom that's being experienced for a prolonged period of time. It's all about coping. And for me, advocacy is like the other side of the coping. Like, well, okay, I'm sorry that everybody had to go through that holy hell, but here we are now. What can we do? How can we cope with that trauma, and how can we turn it into something amazing and a solution for other people? I mean, to me, there's nothing better that can come out of that kind of trauma and awful experience.
Absolutely. But in the storytelling piece, I think is so important, because it's one thing if you quote a bunch of statistics or you say that this is published in this paper, but when you're sitting there and you tell a person, this is what happened to me, they can't really argue with that. Like, how do you tell somebody, no, that didn't happen? Of course it did. The person telling you it happened,
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah.
So speaking of that, I know your passion came from your family member losing your sister. Can you talk just a little bit about like family support, maybe family advocacy, or how families can, tell me about your family, the family stuff.
So, well, I can only speak from my experience with NCAAR, and that's we have a specific family oriented group. I'm hoping to do this, to basically model what we've already done and create that in the Benzo Alliance. I would really like to have family specific, and it's not to silo people. It's and I think I just want to take a second to say that family support and the family advocacy voice is very powerful. And some people don't think it is because they're not the ones that were directly impacted, but the family impact, when you talk about, and I'll just give you, just for 1 second, I'll just tell a story. So we, many years ago now, I want to say maybe it was 2000 and, I don't remember the exact year, but it was a few years back, we got the parity bill in New Jersey. Does anybody
No,
know?
explain it. Explain what that means.
The parity bill basically says that any mental health or addiction illness should be treated the same as any other health problem like cancer or diabetes. And although federally it was passed many, many years ago, I think it was in the 90s, nobody was enforcing it. And the states certainly weren't doing that. So in New Jersey, we had created a piece of NCAAR had created a piece of legislation around that. Anyway, my point is that we did get it passed. This enforcement bill is extremely instrumental in so many families kind of rebuilding financially. And the people who got it passed was really mostly the family members. I mean, they championed it. And I think people were surprised about that. And so we learned a lot from that. And the reason I bring it up is because I think it's important if it worked, like we learn from what works and what doesn't work. And if it worked there, I feel like it absolutely has its place in the Alliance. Yeah. And I'm really hopeful. And this is a great time for people who are maybe listening now. This is like a startup almost. So it's a good time to jump on and say, hey, I have some ideas, or I want to be a part of this, or let me help lead, or I don't want to lead, but I do want to, get some support and also lend my time or whatever. It's all of those things, that's the beauty of advocacy. It's so many things rolled up into one.
Yeah. And it's lots of hands helping. It's not one it takes all of us with different skills and different gifts and different ways to help. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's see. I'm trying to think, where should we go? I think lastly, let's just talk about how can people support the Alliance? What can people do to get involved? What needs do you have right now? If you know. It's a big question. I know.
That we have right now, but I definitely think we need more people directly impacted by this Benzo crisis, whether it doesn't matter. And I also know, there's many different types of individuals, whether it's family members, patients, medical professionals. There's so many, spokes to the wheel kind of thing. But I do think that the best way to get involved is communicate with us about how and what ways, what would you like to learn? What would you like to be a part of? Really, the only way advocacy works is when people work on the things they're interested in. You can't assign tasks. It's what moves you, what makes you want to get involved. So just contacting us, you can reach out to me directly on my Facebook or my LinkedIn. You can always email info@benzoreform.org. I'm trying to think of other ways, but right now that's literally, we are at that point where I don't even have publication. I'm actually just designing our publication for an agency brochure. Like we are that in the building stages of things. So to give you an idea, that's definitely how we can start. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful to anyone out there, but
I love it. All right, we have a couple questions. I don't know if you can answer these, but I'm gonna pitch. I will try. Okay, the first one is from someone who actually is in the Netherlands, and they are helping people taper off medication. They're asking about, is the Alliance possibly trying to advocate for pharma to make different dosages? So like, how hard it is for people to get off benzos when they safely taper. Is that a point of advocacy that's possible?
In the future, I definitely think it is. And I don't want to say certainly yes or no, even right now. It's not something that I'm aware of being discussed at this moment, but that's not because it's not important. It's because we have so many things we're trying to do. In fact, that was one of the points I was going to make, was about the accountability of the pharmaceutical industries and how I feel like that's not something touched on enough. We do touch on it with opioids, but we haven't really touched on it yet. I don't feel enough with the benzo space.
It's true. All right, now this is a really good question that I like, and probably kind of deep. Let's talk about credibility and stigma. Okay, credibility of a mental health patient who says, many of us who are on anti-anxiety medication, we have some kind of mental health diagnosis. So it's almost as if I see it every day, but like a doctor will not believe a patient because like, no, it's just part of your anxiety. You're not experiencing this. This isn't happening. So there's like a lack of credibility. We are not believed automatically. But then there's the added stigma of we're talking about a medication that hurt me, that I was taking as prescribed. There's a stigma there. And then also to overlap possible addiction, where this is not an addiction problem, but anytime you say like this drug caused overdoses, or this drug has withdrawal, then a legislator or a doctor or anyone will think automatically like, oh, this is an addiction issue. Like, I don't want to hear it. Those people are doing this to themselves or something. So can you talk a little bit about credibility and stigma within the advocacy world? Like, how do we work with that?
I can talk a lot about that. I could probably talk all day about it, but
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, in New Jersey, we have a stigma-free bill that we're trying to get passed right now about changing all the language in every piece of legislation, because what we say does matter, and it does translate to credibility or lack thereof. What I want to say about it is that we've come a long way from where we were, but we have a long way to go. I do recognize that's an issue, but what I can say is we basically just always parrot back about, this is a public health issue. Once you start, and I know it's hard right now because again, everything does feel overshadowed a lot of the time by the opioid numbers and the, people, they stop all of that when they realize, oh my gosh, so many people are dying. And so it's harder than when you have this issue of, well, these are, legally prescribed medications right now, and the patients that are getting them maybe at times are not given as much credibility as they deserve. The only thing that I can say about that is not to give up in trying to articulate what you need or want, or a family member needs or wants, and trying to, if you don't find a provider or prescriber who is going to listen, I say get another one. My personal experience is I've had to go to other people who will listen to what I need to say and to what I need, or a family member. And so maybe not in the benzo specific space for me, but in other ways. Yeah, so I say it's real and I don't want to discredit it, but I think it is being I think it is being worked on as quickly as it possibly can from people like me and many others like me who work in this space to try to move things to out of the dark ages, so to speak.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to that. Just like how you say things, how you present them when you're talking about it. I hate it. I hate it. Like when I have to tell clients, don't act angry at your doctor, like just simply ask a question. What do you know about coming off of this Xanax? Or what do you know about coming off Valium? What can I expect if I want to come off of it? Like tiny little questions, and don't tell them what you Googled. Don't tell them what you read. Don't, the passion, like it's like it works against us. I hate it. I hate it so much because we can't express ourselves the way we want to, and we have to like keep a lid on it. It's hard though, because if you want someone to listen to you,
Right. I mean, one of the ways, so for advocacy, we come up with talking points all the time. This is how you can talk to your legislator. Here's how you can talk. I mean, it might be a good idea to try to think about talking points before talking to a doctor about something that you or someone else might feel is complicated, loaded, could potentially cause a problem, because it's easier to do that before when you're in the doctor's office and you feel your face getting hot and you feel like you're not being listened to. At that point, it's too late. So maybe coming in beforehand, prepared. I've had to do that with my own things for physical ailments, and I couldn't get to the bottom of. I would write my own list and come in there and be like kind of armed with, hey, here's why I'm frustrated, but I already had all the frustration on the paper, so it's not coming out.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's much easier to discuss in a way that is kind of calm and cool versus like, conflicted and.
Yes. and upset
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, because this is an upsetting topic. And also, I just thinking back to your second to last kind of talk, what we were talking about a couple questions back about like how this impacts the whole family. Like it's not just the person that's in withdrawal, but like I see a lot of people that they're home, they had to leave their job, their wife or husband has to take over the finances, like they have to do all this. So it's not just the person suffering from benzo withdrawal or the loss of a loved one, both. It's the whole family that's impacted. And then how's that larger community impacted? Like all these things are involved in advocacy too. We all come at it from our own point of view of how it affects us in particular. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a domino effect, right?
Domino, big time. All right, so that was a super quick interview. I feel like we could be talking more, but is there anything you want to add or anything you want to share?
No,
or
I
anything
just want to encourage people, anyone out there who wants to become involved in any way, there's no minimum requirement of you have to give all this time and energy. If there's something like the question about how are we addressing it with the pharmaceutical companies. If that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to me. We can absolutely have a conversation. We're very open at the Alliance. The issue is, person power. We don't have enough person power to address all the things that need to be done, which is why we need to start an advocacy program. That's, we've started it in small ways, but we need to really launch a true program, getting it out there and building up some numbers and gaining momentum.
Yeah. And so if someone doesn't want to donate time, but they want to donate money, even if it's small, how would they do that for the Alliance?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that the website has like 3 different ways you can donate. You can even, there's memberships too, for individuals. If you want to become a member, that's all on the website. Also, I believe under Benzo Reform, it might even be, just go to Benzo Reform and do the search. It's
there. It's there.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Andora, for your talk today. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for your work. And I know I can hear it. Your work is cut out for you. That's a lot. It's a lot, but I can see it building momentum. You guys have such a good team in place. We've interviewed 5 of you, and there's a few more behind the scenes, but I'm like really excited about the future and like where the Alliance is going. And I feel like you're a force for good and we need you. And my clients need you. All the patients in this community need you. Everybody who's, coming off, I hope you all can help in even a small way, even if it's just do an FDA MedWatch report when you're healed. Like, even if it's just that's the only thing you do to help, please get involved in advocacy in some way.
Yes. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. We'll see you later next week or the week after, I think. I'm going to take a week off because we just did 5 weeks in a row. But we have someone named Sierra. She lives in Idaho, and she is a coach for parents and teens that enter the mental health system, that go to those adventure camps where they put them on lots of, she has a fascinating story, but she helps parents and teens navigate alternatives in the mental health space. So we're going to have her. I think we have a special Joseph Witt-During. I hope we've been emailing back and forth. He's coming. Who else do I got? A couple more cool people. So stay tuned. I'm just going to take a week off because it's my birthday and I'm going to relax. But thank you so much for tuning in. All these videos are available on YouTube later, a couple days later. So you can go catch them there, or they stay here forever on Facebook Live. And they will also be on the Alliance for Benzodiazepine Best Practices page, their website. Go check them out. Again, last thing, it's www.benzoreform.org. All right. See you guys. Bye, Andora. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Bye.